Hello and welcome to At One with Animals, Conversations to Inspire. I'm Janine Uphaim. These conversations are in collaboration with Animaltalk Africa and in support of the Global White Lion Protection Trust. Today, my guest is Yulinda Noortman, who lives in South Africa, and we met through Wynter Worsthorne's Animaltalk Africa online academy in 2014. Yulinda has several degrees in economics, psychology, literature, and languages. But through a profound experience and realization, and after a life-saving operation, Yulinda's life was turned upside down. She begins to open to mysticism and energy medicines, and so enters a very special dog called Nala. Yulinda now runs the Boston Terrier Action Group and a WhatsApp group for animals in need. I hope you enjoy. Hi, Yulinda. Thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me and to listening to my story, and looking forward to our chat today.
Yes.
Really am.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so let's start at the beginning.
Let's start at the beginning before the dogs interrupt us again.
Yeah. So you grew up, you live in South Africa in KZN. Can you say the full?
It's KwaZulu Natal.
That's it. That's correct. That's where you live.
I live. That's the province.
Yeah.
And the area is the Midlands. So it's about an hour from Durban. Most people probably have a better concept of an idea of where Durban is. But yes, so it's a small little town in the Midlands.
Yeah.
Okay. Of KwaZulu-Natal.
And so you grew up during apartheid South Africa, and I talked with Wynter about this, and she shared some of her, feelings and experiences about growing up in that environment. Can you share some of your experiences?
Yeah, Janine, it was, I was born midst it and grew up, had my teenage years right in the middle of it. It was people on a country as a whole, on the psyche of a lot of people. And I think for me, it was always from very young, an awareness of a great injustice. But you must remember, South Africa was closed down and locked down. I mean, we didn't have access to international news. None of that we were privy to. So you knew something was very wrong with the way people were treated, but you had no mirror in which you could say, well, as a kid, I'm talking now, to ground that in. So it was only once I matriculated, and then I was fortunate enough to go on a Rotary exchange to Australia. And suddenly the world just opened up with information. And it was a complete mind-blowing thing to see, your country and what you'd experience in a bigger perspective. So yeah, it was, I think it was instrumental in my awareness of injustice that eventually came out with animals, like injustice to animals, cruelty to animals. I think this is where it's culminated 60 years later.
Absolutely. So then you went, you mentioned Australia. So tell us about Australia.
Well, Australia was a magnificent experience for an 18-year-old. I lived in a small little mining town called Burra. That was my base, but I was very privileged with a program to travel all over. I had 2 magnificent trips that stuck in my mind. The one was seeing snow for the first time in the Victorian Alps in Australia. I never for 1 minute anticipated that I would learn to ski in Australia. It was an experience like a homecoming. I always tell you, I am a Norseman, hence my surname Noortman, meaning the North. I think I have old Viking blood in me, Janine. It speaks to me, the cold and the ice. I just love it. But it was interesting that the trip to the outback, the Northern Territory, the desert, was the one that brought quite a lot of insights. So we went on a student tour up to H.E.A.R.T. We were all 18 years old. There were 13 different countries involved, and we were all young and a little bit wild. We got to H.E.A.R.T. and it was one of the last years, I think, that people were allowed to still climb the rock before it was officially closed down.
Well, it's only actually been officially closed down a year or 2 ago. Actually.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, but it might have been when it was renamed its original name of Uluru. That may have been I've got the gut, but you're quite right. That's right. In any case, so I remember we had been in unprecedented rainstorms on our way through this red desert, and it was a mud bath of red mud, and it was great fun getting stuck, etc. But that morning we climbed H.E.A.R.T, and I know that I got to the top expecting, what it looks like from the bottom, this solid, round, domed rock. And we got to the top, and it had valleys, and it had nooks, and it had crannies, and it was massive and vast and mind-blowing. And I was finished. I was finished. I had 3 months of Australian beer and, enjoying life. So this climb was not easy. And I saw a puddle of water, and all I wanted to do was lie on my tummy and stick my head in it. It wasn't that big. And as I lay there and about to put my head in the water, I saw 2 little tadpoles. And it blew my mind. But I didn't know, it was just too much expecting life on this solid rock. How did they get there? And then, of course, I realized, I've got to get down this rock again. And the moment was lost. And that evening, we were all camping but it only
at the bottom of the rock.
It can just take a split second.
Was a split, and I didn't know it at the time.
No, but it's all you need sometimes is that split
it's all
second.
You need. Yes, true, very true. And so then that night we were camping at the bottom, at the base, and we all had little 2-man tent, 2-woman tent. In any case, so we
2-person tent.
In any case, I was sitting in the tent, and we were told, don't entertain, interact, feed if you see the dingoes. And because they're so uncannily close to dog looking, it's such an easy thing to want to do. And I was sitting on my bum in the tent, and the next minute there was a dingo that was standing with its body half into the tent looking at me. And people fed the animals, and that's why they became so tame, in quote unquote. Brave. And I looked, yes, brave. And we sat there looking at one another, and it was this thing that made my heart started going. I could feel it, and then my fear, of course, became bigger than my wow, and I panicked because I thought I'm caught. Okay, I'm cornered. And the minute I felt the fear and the panic, it turned around and just walked away. And of course, once again, that moment is packed away in the recesses of your mind.
Yeah.
And on you go.
Mm.
Then a while later, I was living on a farm, my host parents, and
Where
they
was
said
this? Whereabouts in
South Australia, in the area called Burra,
Okay.
Burra. It was a copper mining town, but sheep farming mostly. So I was on a farm, and they said that they've got their culling quota, and for kangaroos, and we're going culling kangaroos.
Mm.
And I grew up in a mining town, so I didn't know what culling kangaroos meant. I mean, it was just all a big excitement. It was Land Rovers and dust, and you know, everybody was on the back, and off we go, and it was great and loud, and everybody charging through the felt. What do you call it in the grassland? Felt bush.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they stopped and they saw a kangaroo, and the guys all got out and said, quiet, you know, like in big excitement. And they put a big 303 rifle across the bonnet of the Land Rover. And the guy turned to me and he said, take the shot. You know, exchange student from South Africa.
We'll give her a great experience.
Be macho, you know.
Yeah.
And of course, I did. And I killed the kangaroo. And I knew something terribly wrong had happened in that moment. I knew in my heart that it was wrong, that it was the most sickening feeling that I had. But again, the moment passed very quickly, because I was congratulated and I was the hero of the day, and we went home, and there's no room for that feeling. Jason, sorry, she's deaf, so I can't call her.
No, it's sorry, we're all to the dogs.
So, and that evening, you know, there was a big party and all good. And sometime later, they gave me this dried kangaroo skin, which I was in the same breath fascinated by, because it somehow connected with that sickening feeling. It was like, I need to own this. And yet it was also this revolting feeling of, I did this. This whole dichotomy between these two emotions. Now, on a Friday afternoon, I used to jump on the train. Those days you could jump on a train as a young girl alone, you know, and went to Adelaide to go and meet my friends. It was an hour and a half about on the train. And I met on the train driver. Okay, I don't know how. I was obviously bored. I went wandering up to the front, and I met a real Australian. Okay, his name was John, and he was weathered and burned by the sun, and he had almost no hair left, and he had teeth missing, and he was the train driver. Okay, and he had a sidekick, which was an old Aboriginal man, and it bugs me, but I cannot remember his name. And, you know, every Friday afternoon and Sunday evening back, we would chat up a storm. And eventually it happened that I told them about the kangaroo. And they said, bring the kangaroo skin and we will soften it for you whilst we drive up and down with the train. And at the end of the year, you've got a soft skin and you can take it home. And in doing that, the old Aboriginal man started telling me about Uluru, about the dream time, about the animals, about the connectivity of life. And somehow that experience soothed my own guilt. And my own experience somehow had meaning. I don't know how to explain it, but it was almost meant to be that I needed to know the bigger picture, and which without that experience, I would never have gotten to know a different worldview, a different way, the mysticism. that they bring to their stories and stuff. It was, I think I've said enough, but it touched my spirit deeply.
Yeah, and I think that we, you know, it's so, you know, there's so many levels in life, you know, and on the highest spiritual level, you know, people say that that everything is perfect because it's all for the soul development, etc. But we you know, we are souls living a human experience, and so the human experience is, you know, we need to fully live and experience the life. And so we have always, and I think that's part of the dichotomy as well, but also, you know, this idea that, you know, we've got to be good. And I think it's Jung, and I'm paraphrasing, but he says, I'd rather be myself than be good, meaning
Yes.
I'd rather live my true life than follow this, you know, being good all the time. And so, and I think in that is,
Yes.
you know, we experience things, and I recognize that those moments of looking into the eyes of an animal, and I've had it with Lataba, I've had experiences with him, you know, he's walking straight up to the bucky, looking into my eyes, and then a moment he's like, you know, some part of me says he's too close, and I come back to earth, you know. So
Yes.
it's like we all experience that, and you know, it's a kind of different level, but I think it's still, in my experience, when I was 11, we got a German Shepherd. We'd had older dogs that my parents had when I was born, but with the German Shepherd, he was a puppy. When Jack was a puppy, and we were, you know, we'd done some dog training with him, the trainer was a police dog trainer. And so this is the 80s. This is 1982, or the end of 1982, 1983. And we were taught by the dog trainer, when Jack went to the toilet in the house, we'd push his nose in it. And, you know, and so, like, I was all heart back then. I was such an emotional, sensitive kid, and yet I still didn't know. Of course, there was a part of me that knew, but it was like my training, my programming was so powerful that I just went on with what, you know, I was told to do. And
what to do.
Yeah, so that little voice, it's like, I think that voice is the one that really takes on board those experiences, whether they're mystical, like seeing the tadpoles and looking into the dingo's eyes, and also the knowing that you're doing something that's wrong, but it's like it's sealed in a, you know, in something, waiting for that waking up moment. And, you know, if you hadn't had that experience, and I can totally be with you in that, you know, sort of being caught up in the energy, and, you know, there's sort of it's like you didn't have a comparison to something where you'd experienced that wasn't something that your soul would want to do. So, you know, you go ahead and do it. And, you know, maybe even on a soul level, you know, if our souls can actually see the connections to the past and the future, then that experience, you know, your soul could have known that experience would have led you to having a profound and life-changing conversation with an old Aboriginal man, you know.
I do believe, you know, that in time, that is what came to me, in that there was a fullness to the experience in the end, although it was retrospectively, it was always there, waiting to come to fruition. The true lesson and the true sacrifice on the kangaroo side, and possibly the contract there was between us.
Of course, yeah.
You know, so yes, so it was. It took me, you know, one was so stupid in those days. I mean, South Africa was a political hive. I mean, as exchange students, we were told, don't get involved in anything political out there when you come back, because the state security police will be monitoring you for 2 years back at university. Don't get involved in stuff. And, you know, customs were terrible. I mean, we weren't allowed literature of any kind. And you know, when I came back from Australia, I rolled that uncured kangaroo skin up under my one arm, and a book of Steve Biko, who was one of the main Black perpetrators of the time. That he was a person non grata. He was jailed, and I had his life story under my arm, and they would jail you for that, okay? And I walked through customs with my illegal kangaroo skin on the one arm, my Steve Biko book on the other, straight through customs. Nobody touched me. And it was many years later, when I owned my very first house, when I started working in Joburg, I took the skin and I buried it, and it was like, you know, a thank you and a farewell. It was a thank you and a farewell.
And an honoring for the lesson.
For the lessons.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was like in, you know, 10, 11 years later.
Yeah.
So yeah, it comes full circle.
Yeah.
It comes full circle.
I know, and I think we do have to go through these experiences sometimes to wake us up. You know, it's like you need a shock to wake you up. You know, yeah. So then you went back to South Africa and you went to university and studied economics. Yeah.
Economics and international politics. That was my sort of main degree, and I worked in that area and that discipline that was my working life, was based on that. I never liked it. I never loved it.
No.
Yeah, I was never a natural economist. But it was, you know, in those times, women went, or girls went, and you either did teaching or you did nursing, but you certainly didn't do, I wanted to go and do drama, and my father said, ain't no doing drama for you. You must do something that you can earn money and have an income. So luckily I ended up in you know, doing something that could sustain me until I retired. So yes, that was the beginning. And I think one of the things that I learned was that you know, knowledge and the pursuit of knowledge was a lifelong, and is a lifelong endeavor for me. I love it. I never stopped, but that was my main qualification, that I worked in and found a job in and did the corporate slog for many years.
Yeah, but it does help you train in the things that you want, you know, so you've got the money to train in the things as you start waking up. That happens for a lot of us. So so then you had a life-changing experience.
Yep. I worked after varsity. I got a job in Joburg. And I love the city. I love Joburg, the vibrancy. I felt at home. I hated my job, but I felt at home very much in Joburg as an environment, as a young person. And
just to say, Joburg is Johannesburg, just for those who
yes, Johannesburg. I mean, it's our it was a time of great excitement and finding yourself and exploring life in every way. And then at age 30, I had a tumor removed from my spinal cord. It left me paralyzed. It was somewhat unexpected. And I spent 3 months in a rehab hospital learning to walk again. And it's funny how these things, you know, one door closes and another door opens. But it was at that stage that I met my life partner, Karen, who was my physiotherapist. And we spent the next, 20 years together. and still very much, it was a family that was created that exists today still. And of course, dogs became our thing. I mean, we were two real old lesbians with lots of animals, and the animals started ruling the roost. And yes, the journey with animals seriously started there.
Did you have animals when you were growing up?
Yes. Oh, we always had animals. We always had dogs. But looking back now, it was always they slept outside. They slept in the garage.
They were working.
I think, and I think what we fed them. I mean, I shudder when I think what we fed them, and they were always loved, and they were in the house, and they were with us, but they were just family dogs.
Yeah.
When I started working in Joburg, I got my first own dogs, and I had a boxer, and I had 2 Maltesers, and they were inside and on the furniture, to my mom's horror. And I just said, look, this is my house, new rules, this is the way it's going to be. But I never and whilst I had this very deep relationship with them, it wasn't until later that I actually made that energetic connection. That came later.
So how did that come, like when you talked about your experience in Australia, that it's like you experienced it, the mysticism side of that experience, you experienced that unconsciously, but then that came up into your awareness. So how did that happen, and what happened in your life to bring that awareness up?
Janine, when I just want to backtrack a bit and say that, I studied mainstream things my whole life. So at one stage, I did some psychology, and I did some languages and literature. Those were formal things. But it was always the interesting things in between that actually proved where my passions lay. I mean, I did energy medicine, and I did a degree in meditation and mysticism. And so that it was always there, but I never quite knew where this was going. I just knew I was fascinated with it. I always loved reading and following what was happening in quantum physics. 90% of it, I had no idea what it meant, but I felt it meant something. And it had meaning. It had meaning. So I think then when I had that experience in Australia, it wasn't until later that all these experiences that I had in the outback somehow synergized into coming to understand the connection with animals. These experiences brought all the mystical side, the mystical environment in which we connect with animals to fruition. Things like, for instance, it always fascinated me when you watch birds fly and they turn as one. How does that happen? How do they know this? And I think, so academically and the whole experience throughout my life with mysticism or mystical experiences, I was waiting for something to bring that to life. And it wasn't until a little dog named Nala came, and she somehow said, well, here I am. All those things now have meaning. I am listening to you. And listen back to me. I'm here. I want to talk to you. When suddenly all these things just suddenly came together, and it all made sense, and everything had meaning. That whole life journey, that the bits we didn't understand at the time suddenly came together, that animals are there, and that there's this amazing, phenomenal, life-changing, magic that happens when you open yourself to listen, to just listen. Fast forward, I decided to take an early retirement, and for which at that point I was then very thankful for the many years of corporate slog that I was able to then actually retire. So we moved to KZN, to the Midlands in KZN, and I thought, I'm retiring. I'm going to learn to paint nicely. I'm going to write a bestseller. Looking forward to this so much. And then we got a puppy called Nala. And I actually bought Nala as a gift to my partner. But somehow she was always mine. And it started off, the first connection I had with her, I bought her, and I mean, now I'm in rescue. So I don't buy dogs anymore. I'm adopt and shop first and foremost, but that was part of the learning curve. So I bought this puppy for her in Joburg. I never met her beforehand. She was the only one in the litter that survived. And I started instinctively sending her little messages where after she'd been born, she was still with a breeder woman, and saying, these are images of your new family. These are the dogs that you'll be. This is Karen. She's going to be your new mummy. And you know, the day 8 weeks later, when I got that little Nala, I fetched her. And I was sitting in the passenger seat of the car, and the guy brought her. And she literally launched herself from his shoulder onto my shoulder in the car. And there the magic just happened. She was a phenomenal dog. Okay, so she ended up switching me on, or switching me open, actually. Switching me open, unlocking, and saying, I'm going to talk to you and you will listen, and I will keep on talking until you listen. And listening is not only enough, you will do as I say. I mean, she was a force. As a result, she came, also, it was interesting, she came out the womb hating big dogs. She despised big dogs. And she wanted to eat them up. In puppy class, you know, don't look at the little Yorkies and the little dogs. Let's go for the Australian cattle dog, okay? Let's go for the Rottweilers. I mean, we literally had to separate her from the rest of the class. So we did a lot of work with her. We clicker trained, we agility trained, we did everything that we could. And she was like a sponge. We weren't fast enough for her. You know, we would start her with a trick. Other dogs would take 15 clicks to get a trick. 2 clicks later, she would be standing looking at us like okay, now,
next.
Okay. Later on in years, when after many years of training with her, she would, if you trained with her and you weren't quick enough in doing the next thing, she would invent things. She would run and do things and look at you and say, does this deserve a treat? Yes or no? So she was a phenomenal dog, but she was also intuitively amazing. So as a result of her behavior and her aggression towards dogs, we got other Boston Terriers in the area, and we said, come on a Sunday, let's come to our garden, bring a donut, bring a scone, bring your coffee, and we will do play dates to desensitize Nala. And so started the Boston Terrier Club of our area, which culminated in the end in Boston Terrier Action Group, which became, we are a registered nonprofit organization that rescues, rehabs, and rehomes Boston Terriers. Part of this whole journey, Nala's sister went missing, and something in me said, I will find this little pup. I know I can, and I will. And it took me 3 months, and the owners had sort of given up on her. And it was Nala just saying, you will find her. We will not give up. And I would wake up in the morning, and Nala was there. Talk to Nandi, connect with Nandi, tell her we're coming. And yes, we did. And there I met Wynter in this journey of trying to find Nandi. I contacted Wynter Worsthorne. I knew nothing about animal communication, nothing. And I contacted Wynter. Wynter at that stage she was doing, animals, individual animals, still domestic animals. And it was mind-blowing. What Wynter had told us, a list of 15 things, what to look for. I found them all. We tracked her. to, and in a long story short, we found her 3 months later, but hence entered Wynter into my psyche at that point.
But just for anybody who hasn't watched any of the other interviews, Wynter is an animal communicator, just to say,
Thank you. So yes, and enrolled into Animaltalk Africa, the online academy. And I met you.
That's right.
Our journey started together as well. With Nala very present in that, and your beautiful baby Kaiser being part of my tutor and guide and everything that we experienced together. So yes.
Do you want to share what we did with the remote viewing exercise? that was quite interesting, wasn't it?
It was. Okay, so one of the last lessons in the first part of the course is that you've got to do a remote viewing session, and it's daunting. It's very daunting. So I don't know if I probably said to you, Janine, I need to do it with you because I needed somebody that's not going to think that I'm a complete mambara.
It's probably mutual.
In any case, so we decided that we would videotape one another. So Janine went first, and we chose Nala. So Janine would connect with Nala, and at a specific time, and I would observe and with my cell phone where Nala was going. So to see afterward the record of what Nala was seeing and how much Janine was remote viewing. Okay. And it was phenomenal. It was Janine saw Nala walk past the wood bins. She showed you the flooring, the different types of flooring in the house. She showed you the rockery. She showed you, which you loved, was the avo tree.
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, we were still learning back then, but it was, questioning, do they have avocados in South Africa? Let's say it, Janine, yes, there's avocados. Oh, wow.
Yes, I mean, that was, and then we had the video to prove it. And then we swapped around and I saw you went outside and I saw the wheelbarrow in there was filled with water. It was snow. It was beautiful. But there was this dead tree growing in the wheelbarrow. And I said to you afterwards, but Janine, that poor dead tree, why have you got a dead tree growing in a wheelbarrow? I mean, the poor tree. And you said to me, but there's no tree. There's a wheelbarrow. There's water in the wheelbarrow. Ain't no tree. So then we watched the video. And as the dog view came into perspective, we saw that it was the fence post behind the wheelbarrow that looked just like a dead tree in the wheelbarrow. That was an enlightening moment in terms of trust the images you get, just give them.
And for both of us, it was to say what you see. And I mean, it's like this is part of the practice, having a lot of practice is keeping the image and feeling, or however you experience or receive information, is to keep that as pure as possible. So because if you'd said fence post, I would have been able to say, oh, there's fence posts. But because our minds are so quick, so you see the image and you straight away, what can be like that? Oh, it's a tree. It's like our mind so quick. Yeah, exactly. And part of the thing that we with practice is to actually keep it as the original experience that sort of directly from the animal. But it's I mean, it's a very deep, profound ability that anybody can do, obviously, but it just takes a lot of practice for most people. But that was amazing experience for both of us. It was
and we both passed.
Exactly. It was a very confirming experience.
It was indeed. It was indeed.
So in full transparency, Yulinda and I finished our talk yesterday, but because of a little known thing called stealing fiber wires in South Africa, her internet went a little funny and the quality towards the end of the conversation wasn't very good. We did think we were going to try and fool you and make you think it was the same day. However, it's now 300 degrees Celsius in Durban and Yulinda is not able to be in the same room. So just to explain why we have the same clothes on. But Yulinda, in the meantime, overnight, I was thinking about your story with the kangaroo, and it had been nagging me. There was a story I have heard before of a profound awakening, and I realized what it was, and that is that reminds me of Linda Tucker of the White Lions. It reminds me of her story, because her story began when her and her sister and a few friends were out in a bucky, so an open backed van, 4-wheel drive. So they were out and they got stuck. They went out because they'd heard that a very rare white lion, which hadn't been seen for a couple of decades, was going to be born. There was a prophecy or something, and they went out. So they weren't thinking about the animals, they just wanted to be part of the action. I think, you know, they were just there for the fun of it. And their bucky broke down and they were stuck. The lights were failing. There was, I think, you know, like 20 lions around them.
Yeah, it was a big group.
Yeah, and the male lion, they had really pissed off the male lion because, you know, of course, his mate is giving birth to a cub, and they were very scared. You know, the people were getting more and more scared. They didn't know what to do. I think one of the people was thinking of, you know, making a run for it, like they were desperate. And then suddenly a woman holding the hand of one child and another child on her shoulders walked through the pride of lions, calmed them down, and then someone was able to go and get another vehicle. And, you know, so you're guided into an experience that is of the level that you are in that moment. So for you were an 18-year-old, you know, having fun, getting caught up in the energy. And, you know, the same for Linda. It was a group that were going out, it was fun. And then in the same way that you, through that experience, met the Aboriginal man who shared the deep and profound mysticism of the Aborigines, of the dream time, the same way Linda Tucker learned from Maria Causa, who was the lady that walked through the lions, you know, and then was born the Global White Lion Protection Trust 20 years ago, 30 years ago even. So I just wanted to share that that similarity, because I think that you know, the initial reaction can be to judge someone who's had an experience like that. And I know that Linda's got pictures of holding a cub, lion cub, and I'm not sure if it was Mara that she was got pictures of, and she, you know, she again goes back to that, you know, she didn't know any better at the time, and none of us do. Like,
no,
we learn, and then I think it's so easy for us to judge ourselves for what we didn't know. And I mean, I'm not, you know, I'm far from pure when it comes to that, you know.
But I think it's so interesting when one starts looking at these similarities and shared stories. Whilst you were talking, I was thinking, you know, we spoke about getting Nala. Now, I bought Nala, okay. Now, since knowing what I know now and doing rescue, I can never in good conscience again support a breeder that breeds unhealthy dogs and buy a dog. I can only ever say my heart and my home's open to a rescue dog. But that's the journey. And that's the, you know, the fruition of, I think, things that happen to us without us knowing at the time, to suddenly all pop and say, well, right, here it is. Are you going to take this opportunity to fulfill some sort of purpose? Or, you know, if it's whether it's a preordained purpose or whether it's a pre-negotiated purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
The fact is, you are presented with an opportunity to go out there and do what you're supposed to do. And I think that is when one comes alive in you know, you feel that excitement, that it's that, you know, I'm enjoying this. I love this. Doesn't matter how tired you are, I'm going to do this. And it's an interesting analogy. I wouldn't have thought of that in 100 years. But yeah, I mean,
well, you know, so many people, I mean, not just animal communicators, in general, people have been changed, their lives have been changed for the better by animals. Completely. And that was the case for me. I had this realization when I was about 11 that it didn't make sense to my mind that we couldn't communicate with animals. But, you know, I wasn't around anyone who I could talk to about or anything, you know, probably never mentioned it to a soul, you know, just, and it was probably fleeting because I had, you know, I couldn't do anything with that thought. And then it took buying a standard poodle from a breeder, actually 2 standard poodles from breeders, that changed my life. So Nala led you to creating the Boston Terrier Action Group, and then she also guided you to begin Paws for Paws, or Animals in Need. Can you talk about that first experience that you had, and how that led you on to, you know, this amazing group of you know, animal communicators and healers? And
it's been a journey, that's for sure. Well, at the time I was following a Facebook post of this little dachshund that we think, you know, we have just outside the cities on the main arterial road, we have what we call fuel depots where the big trucks stop and you can just fill up, and there's usually some sort of fast food takeaway place, etc. This particular petrol port was an hour outside of Joburg, and so what people do when they want to get rid of dogs, they just drive out of the city and they drop the dogs over there. And what happens, they know that there's high traffic volumes, so hopefully somebody will see the poor lost dog and pick it up and do something with it. In this case, nobody did. And this little dog started living out it was farmland behind it, vast farmlands, and had become feral over a period of 5-6 months. Winter was approaching, and this one welfare organization had been trying every second week. They would go out on a Friday afternoon, sit there, wait, see if they could catch this little dog. The winter approaching meant it wouldn't survive. It's a harsh winter. And I followed this on Facebook, and I get that feeling of, I wish I could do more. I wish, you know, what is there that one can do? And then Nala spoke one morning at 5 o'clock, and she said, you will get together 15 people and you will create a group and you will do a guided meditation. You will record a guided meditation, which you will all do at the same time. And you will do it at the same time that the people are there on the ground trying to catch this little dog. Well, you don't say no to Nala. So I duly got some unsuspecting candidates from friends and family and whoever I could find, and said, you will all be here tonight at 8 o'clock and you will sit and listen to this visualization and we will all help this little dog. They all indulged me. I contacted the people that on the ground that were doing the searching on the ground, and I think they were so desperate, they just said, yeah, sure.
We'll try anything.
They were like in a little bit, but desperation allows you to open your mind to anything. And the first event, the first night, we suggested a trap crate, and they put the trap crate there, and the people were sitting in the quiet, in the dark, waiting for this little dog to come. And for the first time in all this time, it actually came quite close to the crate, but wouldn't step foot inside. Okay. But in that moment that it approached the crate, we all got so excited. The people on the ground, because we were on a WhatsApp line all the time. Everybody was like, it's coming, he's coming, he's coming. And of course, he ran away. I approached Wynter and I said to Wynter, please, can you help? We need a little bit of help here. What are we doing wrong? And she said, well, 2 things that we can do. One, you've actually got to include the rescuers in the whole meditation. You've got to hold them as well in calmness and in stillness, to allow the little dog not to be, get scared of their energy of excitement, because it will pick up on that. Which was, of course, it was so obvious when she said it. It's silly that one can't, but it was so true. And then she offered us a session, one of her training sessions, that she would do the guided session with us, and all of us were together on it, and we all sat together. And it was the following Friday. We did the same. Everybody was there doing the thing, and that little dog came and walked into that trap cage. No fear, no angst, no panic. The little door went clap behind it, and it was calm, and it was just the most amazing thing. Hence the start of Animals in Need group, which we've now grown to about 30 people. Some people come and go, but the core group has always stayed true. And we run it on a WhatsApp group, and so a dog will come across our way, and we don't advertise, and we don't charge money. From that initial little dashhund grew the group, and we started having the most wonderful experiences, Janine. We had an example, for instance, where a dog went missing in farm areas, but also the farm was sort of a panhandle in reserved conservation areas, where there were all sorts of animals and predators that could very easily eat. It was a little Boston Terrier, could hups it up very easily. And for some reason, it all happened. We got the group together, and the people said that they will go out. The group guided this bucky, and it was dark, and we just said, keep on going on that road, keep on going on that road. And it came, and they said, there's nothing. And suddenly it was just the sensation of, you must stop now. And they stopped, and there was an old outbuilding. And they said, but there's nothing. It's pitch black dark, and there's nothing. And we're calling and calling. Nobody is answering. And we said, just walk there. Just go inside. And, they found the little dog there, too scared, too traumatized to cry out, to say anything. That was quite a profound example. Then we had, for instance, another interesting one was there's a wonderful group that works in Lebanon. Now, in Lebanon, dogs are not the most favorite flavor, and it's war-torn, and there's just poverty, and it's a horrible situation. This organization that does the work over there on the ground, and they had this little stray, and somehow he escaped, and they somehow connected with us. And we went through a period of a month where we did our visualization, but after the visualization, nothing happened immediately. But we persevered, and everybody in their own time in their own quiet space, in their own way, held this little dog, and the intention was, go back to the shelter. You are streetwise. You know where it is. Go back to the shelter. And you know, almost 3 weeks later, that little dog walked into the shelter.
Mm. So it's amazing work that you have been doing. You've changed the lives, not only of the animals, but of the people. People don't need to be healers or animal communicators to join the group. So anyone who wants to make a difference for animals, and, you know, because that's one of the things that, you know, maybe people don't want to be animal communicators or don't have the time to study something, but really want to help animals. And it helps people who, you know, who the despair people feel when they hear stories about animals and they feel like they can't do anything. It helps, you know, it gives them something to do, something, you know, quite powerful to do.
It is completely, and you know, I think that's important to maybe mention, Janine, that there's no, you know, religion doesn't play a role. So whether you want to call it prayer, commitment, or whether you just want to call it a meditation, or whether you want to call it a guided visualization, or claiming some of your Zen energy for a moment, or if you just prefer like the stillness of it all. So there is none of those things play a role. It's just really an opportunity that you can make a difference to an animal's life.
One thing that whenever I have, and I just mentioned this because that because I'm obviously part of your group, working with quite a few missing animals. Whenever I get clients asking, you know, sending an email saying that they've got an animal that's missing, now I recommend Wynter's, she's written a book, which is in PDF form, Where is Biggles? And also she recorded a webinar, A Heart for Missing Animals. And I can put the link for that in the description of this, because I think then it also, especially, you know, because you're open to people, you know, joining the group. So I will put your WhatsApp number in the description of this, and
100%.
Yeah. 100%. And and you're also the work that you do with the Boston Terrier Action Group, I will, for people who want to donate towards that,
That would be awesome. Thank you.
I'll put the Facebook page in so people can, and if anybody wants to connect with you that doesn't have Facebook, then they can send you a message on WhatsApp as well.
Absolutely welcome. Absolutely welcome.
And also, for anybody who wants to join the Paws for Paws, or Animals in Need Paws for Paws group, but you also are open to people setting up, you know, the same sort of thing as you.
Yeah, I think what often happens is that people hold on to my little domain, but I think what I would love to see is, you know, somebody becoming part of the group, seeing how it's done, and then taking it off and saying, right, family, friends, co-animal lovers, you know, make a group of 10 people. And wouldn't it be fantastic if we had 20 other groups all over the world, and you know, twice a year we get together as all these groups and sit in meditation and stillness for the bigger causes, like the dolphins and the lions, or you know, so yes, I would love to see that grow. I would love to see that grow.
So if anybody has that, and you know, I'm 100% sure there are groups out there like that. So if anyone watching this is part of a group, you know, maybe there is, you know, a coming together for bigger causes. And, you know, astrologically, we're coming into the age of Aquarius, and Aquarius, you know, one part of Aquarius energy is groups and community. So that's definitely, you know, moving with the energy of the times is to do things with groups together. We're not, you know, not standing out on your own doing, you know, this is my thing, you know.
No, I think that's the big no. Yes.
It is very much working together with other people. And so one thing I just want to surmise with what we've talked about over these last couple of days is how important it is to follow your heart and to find ways to be courageous. And you know, I ask for help from my guides or the divine, or and I don't necessarily know who I'm talking to, but I ask for help. And I, you know, whenever someone's struggling with something, I say, find the part of you that has faith in something bigger than you, and call on it for support. And it's there, like you get the support when you ask for it, but you have to ask for it. And you know, don't have to be spiritual, you don't have to be an animal communicator, you don't have to be a healer, but you know, and so for some people it's their animals. You know, if the animals have passed over, you know, calling on that animal, or you know, a family member, a loved one who's passed over, you know. So it's like it's not like you only get support if you believe in this, you know. It's like everybody can get the support, the you know, from the invisible realms support. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Yulinda, and thank you for meeting me again today to you know, it's like part 2, isn't it, almost?
It was an absolute pleasure. I love chatting to you about all things animal and all the human things we throw in between. It's always a learning curve chatting to you, and good luck with all your amazing endeavors.
Thank you.
And I hope one day that we'll see an interview, you being interviewed, so that you can share all the wonderful things you involved in and what you do for others. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks so much, Yulinda. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you found this entertaining, inspiring, enjoyable. I'm loving doing these interviews, talking with amazing people like Yulinda. It's inspiring me to, you know, I just want to talk to so many people. So if you are finding a benefit, enjoying these conversations, and you'd like to support me in that work, then I now have a Patreon account. I also have Buy Me a Coffee account and a PayPal account, and 50% of any donations for these interviews are going to the Global White Lion Protection Trust. Thank you, and see you next time.